Our planet. Beautiful. Big. Many different countries, which means many different languages, many different cultures. For some people, this can create conflicts. It's not only a language problem, it's a cultural problem. In this country, they do things differently than in this country. That's the world we live in. Sometimes this can make us feel sad, depressed. It can make us feel angry at another country, another culture, another type of people. But perhaps that's not the best way to go in this world. That's not the best way to think, perhaps. Sometimes I believe if we take a little time to understand the why. Why does this person act that way? Why does this person say that? Well, in this country, they see things differently. Oh, in this country, they have a background of this and that. In my country, we don't. Well, that makes us different. I think it's important to know conflicts and differences are not only a language problem, they're an understanding problem. So today, I'd like to look at thinking a little deeper about this issue of differences and why a person may not feel at home in a foreign country. Why a person cannot connect with certain people while they're in a different country. If we can understand this, we might be able to feel much better wherever we're living, much happier, much more comfortable, much more at home. And I think if we can feel this way, we can be more successful and achieve what we want to achieve in life. Connect with a lot of people, have more friends, and have more life experiences. Perhaps one of our challenges of living in this big, beautiful world is using our brains to overcome our conflicts, our differences, and trying to rise over the anger we might sometimes feel, the sadness we might sometimes feel when we're dealing with people from another country and another culture. Welcome to EnglishMeeting.com. I'm Dave Sconda. I had an opportunity to interview a courageous and sincere language learner from Russia named Olga. Olga has a unique life. She traveled to many different parts of the former Soviet Union with her family as a child, and later married a man from Sri Lanka who was living in Russia. This couple moved to Sri Lanka together and lived there for 8 years. In search of a different life, they both moved to Australia, where Olga has been living now for 4 years. Olga wrote to me in a response to a documentary clip that I'm working on regarding language learning and cultural issues for immigrants. She boldly explained some things she was feeling as an immigrant in Australia. Most language learners don't speak about how they feel within a new language or living in a new country. I believe it's important to express your feelings to the right people, especially when you're an immigrant. Feeling happy and comfortable in your environment is important for any human being, and even more important for a language learner. Negativity can kill efforts to learn or improve a second language. You may notice Olga's unique accent. It's a mixture of Russian and Sri Lankan. Take some time now to learn about Olga's situation. Perhaps it is similar to yours. Maybe you have some ideas to help her, and people like her. This film might even help you. I spoke to Olga from Los Angeles, California, in the United States, and reached her in Australia using Skype.
I'm talking to Olga, and Olga, why don't we start off with me asking you where you're from?
I'm originally from Russia.
From Russia. Okay.
From Russia.
And what part of Russia?
My last place was in Leningrad.
Ah, Leningrad.
But I was traveling a lot in Russia because my father likes to travel. And I was living in different places.
You mean as you were growing up, as a child, you lived in different places?
Yes, we had a big country, like 15, now it's 15 separate countries.
That's right.
Yeah, but it used to be one big country. So I was born in somewhere in Kazakhstan.
So, okay, so you lived in many different parts of Russia, and you mentioned to me before that you lived for a number of years in Sri Lanka.
Yes, 8 years.
8 years. And why don't you tell us, why did you move to Sri Lanka?
Because I met a guy from Sri Lanka and married him. And we went to Sri Lanka to live there.
I see. And did you meet this man in Russia?
Yeah, he was studying in Leningrad. We were studying together.
I see, I see. So it was a man and a romance that brought you to Sri Lanka.
Yes.
I see. Okay, and then how did you like living there?
Yeah. First of all, I was very young. I was 24, I think.
Okay.
And I think when in this age, it's easy to adapt to any country. It's easier. For example, now I'm 38. So it becomes more difficult with age, I think, to adapt. And that time it was like, it doesn't matter which country. It's like, it's even interesting to go and live in any different country.
Sounds like an adventure.
Adventure, yeah.
And quite different country than Russia.
Yes, it was different. Climate is different. Tradition is different. They have very strong tradition.
What was one of the things you liked about it? It could be anything, food, culture, people.
I like that Sri Lankan people is very, I like it and don't like it. They're very simple. They're not sophisticated.
Now, if you're from Sri Lanka, please don't take offense. She is a language learner and is doing her best to describe in her mind. She's not trying to offend. No one's mad here, right? Anyone mad? No? Good. Now, back to the interview.
And it's very easy to talk to them. You don't have tension, and I feel relaxed. When I'm talking to them, I feel relaxed.
You feel relaxed. So perhaps when you say that they're more of a simple people, like they're not trying to hide anything or trying to impress you, they're just being themselves. Would you say that might be true?
Yes, something like that.
And that's it. Well, why don't you tell me, why do you think they were so easy to talk to?
I was thinking about that question because you asked me last time about what's the problem as me an Australian and me being in Sri Lanka, the difference between
Right. And you mentioned Australia, just for the people who are listening. Now you're living in Australia, just for those who are watching this. But we haven't gotten to that part of the story yet. So
Sorry.
that's okay. That's okay. I'm just wondering, well, what do you think? Why do you think they were easy to talk to in Sri Lanka?
Sometimes it's difficult to explain because sometimes you talk to a person and you feel good by talking to him. You feel relaxed with that person. And sometimes you talk to another person, you feel tense, you want to run away, and you don't know why. And sometimes I try to analyze it, but you can't analyze certain things. It's just, you just feel certain way, and there is no logical explanation maybe for that.
Okay. Okay. Well,
That's what I was thinking about that. It's a big problem for me. So I was thinking, why did I feel so kind of relaxed in Sri Lanka, and here I feel a bit kind of tense?
right.
And I think it's difficult to explain. Maybe it's connected to energy even. So you to one person you feel good, and both will be good people smiling with you. But with one person you will be relaxed and open. With other person you will want to just get out, run away.
Right. Right. Yeah. Well, what I'm getting from you is it's hard to explain it precisely, but your example of, two people who are both good people, but one person you feel very comfortable with and the other person you don't feel comfortable at all with. I think everybody can relate to that. And in those situations, we don't know all the time, why that feeling is about. So, okay, so you lived there for 8 years, and then what brought you to Australia?
Because we thought it's a good country. We thought it will be easy. It's like living in Australia, and we will be comfortable and economical country, very comfortable to live economically. It's very developed compared to Sri Lanka. So we thought to come and try here.
Ah, I see. So it wasn't like a job that brought you there or anything of that sort. It was just the country seemed very open to you, and it seemed like a fun place or a positive place for you to move to.
In Sri Lanka, there was some kind of problem. There was a war with Tamil in Sinhalese, and we had a lot of terrorists. They put bombs here and there. So that's one reason. The other reason is economical, I think. That's all right to live in the country, but you can't travel. If you live in Sri Lanka and work there, it's very difficult if you want to go some other country. Their money, like rupees, compared to dollars, is so little that when you go out of the country, you can't do anything.
I see. You don't have much spending money, in other words.
Yes, you can't travel. You can live inside the country, and it was difficult. Economically, financially, it was difficult living there.
Okay, I see. So how long have you been living in Australia?
I think 4 years now, around 4 years.
Okay. And we're talking, about some of the issues that you've had living in Australia in terms of culturally speaking. Since you've been there from 4 years, moving to any country in the beginning is always jarring. It's always a little bit shocking and that sort of thing. Do you feel more comfortable living there now than you did your first year?
Um, as I said, I still feel uncomfortable with Australian people.
And you felt
I
that
would
the
still feel
same?
uncomfortable, and I still feel uncomfortable.
You do. Okay.
It's probably getting better, of course, I think for years. Yeah, it's getting better.
Okay. Now, one of the things that we talked about before this recording was that this kind of cultural divide that you were experiencing, and you perhaps don't feel as comfortable with the Australian people, and I believe you described it as an invisible wall between yourself and them. Could you elaborate a little bit about that?
Yeah, I feel that it's hard for me to understand Australian people because I have different influences during my life, and they have like different influences on their lives. I feel they're living in a totally different world, and I'm living in a different world. I can compare it with like computers. For example, they're PC and I'm Mac. We are both computers, but we are like functioning in different programs. That's how I feel that.
I see. And when you, okay, so when you talk with them, how is it different than other people that perhaps Sri Lanka or in another country where you felt more comfortable? Do you feel like they're not opening up to you? Do you feel like...
Yes, I feel they don't opening up to me.
I see.
I can talk, yeah, hi, how are you? But never get friendly for some reason, or we never talk more, I don't know, deeply, or we never become very friendly. We never become friends.
You never become friends. So, well, what kind of interaction have you had in terms of getting to know people? Do you work
Yeah.
there? Okay, so you have Australian colleagues where you work?
Yeah, they're all right. We talk at work. We are talking when we have a lunch break. But as I said, we are not good friends.
Going from polite greetings, hi, how are you, to small talk, to friends. These are important steps in connecting to culture and language. Those who remained isolated from the target culture by not making friends can inhibit cultural understanding and language development. It's my belief that it should be your goal to make friends with the people who are the native speakers of the second language.
Right. Well, how would you characterize yourself in terms of, being a Russian person? Do you feel like you carry a lot of the, whatever this might be, like a Russian persona with you, and living now in Australia, and do you think perhaps that cultural background clashes with the Australian personality?
It's difficult. I also live in Sri Lanka, and I know one thing, I'm very good with Asian people. Even I'm not good with Russian much, like I'm not that easy, even for me, like even Russians, it kind of the best I feel with people who has connection to or some roots from Asia.
Some roots from Asia. Well,
Even their parents maybe, but they're like in Australia. I have friends like that who born in Australia, but parents are maybe from Asia or from Italy or from other countries.
I see. Well, but what do you think it is about the Asian people that helps you to connect with them more?
I don't know.
You don't know. It's a mystery. Well, I mean, since you've had a lot of different experiences in your life, how do you see yourself? Do you see yourself as a Russian woman in terms of your personality, in terms of your, the way you perhaps interact with people?
Not 100% Russian now. I'm a little bit not Russian because I was living in Sri Lanka as well.
Right. So you have a lot of
bit,
influence from that.
Yeah. And I think there is Russian personalities, because if you take, for example, individual person, Russian, and compare influences, which is in different influences I had or that Russian person had, we had a lot of revolutions, we had wars, and we had a lot of unfair things happen in Russia, a lot of insecurity in Russia, political, economical. So all this will affect that person, and that person will talk differently, will have different jokes.
Right.
And take, for example, Australian person. Nothing happened in Australia. Economically stable, politically all right. Nothing happened much. Just Aboriginal problem. There was maybe 200 years ago, 100 years they had. But otherwise they are all right. That's why if we joke, our jokes are, for example, Russian jokes will be a bit bitter. And for example, Australian person will joke, he will joke differently because of different influences on that Australian person life.
Olga speaks about a country's history, including war, and how it influences culture, influences people, how it affects interaction with other people. This is very important to understand when interacting with those from another country. Instead of saying, "Oh, I don't like those people from such and such a country," or, "Oh, I think those people are kind of rude," perhaps it is wise to consider the country's background for clues and understanding why some people behave, act, interact as they do. Olga mentions that Russian jokes may be on the bitter side, while Australian jokes may be on the light-hearted side. This is a great example of how a country's background affects its culture.
That's how we are forming our nationality or character.
Right.
There is Russian or there is Chinese, because we have different influences. Something happened to us, and that's how we behave now. We behave this way or we behave another way.
Well, I think that's very astute to recognize that, and that could very well be a big part of this disconnect. Me being American, I have not been to Australia, so I cannot speak for Australians. What I can speak about is perhaps my interactions with some Russians that I've known, or instead of saying Russia, some Russian and former Soviet bloc countries that were part of the Soviet Union. And this is just very generalization. So, of course, this does not, I'm not trying to say that, all people are this way. But in just from an American perspective, perhaps sometimes just the Russian personality can come off as a bit strong and direct compared to the way people are here. And sometimes it's fine. Some Americans really like that. Other people shy away from it because it makes them feel uncomfortable. And I wonder, do you think perhaps any of that is happening in your situation?
I never heard about Russians. They're like that. Direct and hard, and I never heard that.
You've
But
never
maybe
heard that?
Yeah, I never heard that somebody say like that
Oh,
about Russians.
well, maybe they don't want to say it to you.
They said to me, I didn't like it.
What
They told
did they
that.
say?
As something what you said. They direct, hard, and all that. Even worse than that.
Well, I'm sorry. I'm just a little confused. I thought you said no one has said that before to you.
They told about me what you said. But
Oh, about you, but not about Russian people.
tell it about Russians. So I thought so it means I am Russian.
To clarify what is happening at this moment in the interview, Olga has heard other people describe her as direct, strong, rude, and possibly some worse comments. But she hasn't heard these words, direct, strong, rude, to describe the Russian personality. This is a moment of realization for Olga. Interestingly, it makes her feel better because she thought it was a personal problem that made her so different or too strong, when in fact it was the culture she grew up in. The personality of Russians, as she said. Now, if you're Russian, please don't be offended. We are not saying Russians are rude, just different. And she is just explaining with courage her experiences. Are we good? All good? Okay, let's continue.
Because they never seen Russian people, so they comment about me.
Ah, right.
I heard that it is Russian, the Russian personalities are like that.
Right. So,
That's sad.
that's
We are all like that.
that's sad. Well, I mean, look, so many, we live in a world with so many different cultures, different backgrounds, and all cultures. I mean, first of all, we're talking about a mix. So perhaps one culture is going to get along with another culture well, a different country doesn't mix so well. But all of our culture, all the different cultures of the world have their good points and bad points. And I wouldn't, I'm not even saying it's a bad point. I'm just saying that in my small experience with a number of people from that part of the world, that's what I've seen how some Americans react, and of course myself as well. And you did a very good job of explaining, the background of Russia, what made that country. And Russia, yes, indeed, has been through a lot, and all of those experiences shape the people. And like you mentioned, in Australia, much different background. We could talk about, other countries that haven't been, conquered or anything like this, like Thailand or something like that. And then you can look at the people in a sociological or a cultural, anthropological viewpoint, and you can kind of shape some understanding or perhaps some opinions about those people. But the thing is, in terms of American perspective, if somebody comes off as too harsh, well, the Americans will think, even though it's not intended that way, they will think, oh, that person is a little rude, is a little not so nice. and they might back away from that person a little bit. And if you grow up with that and that's part of who you are and everything, you don't, it's like you don't mean anything bad. That's your background. That's what you know. So what do you do in that situation? So, well, let me ask you, do you think that could be what could be happening in terms of Australia and the Australian people?
Oh, now I'm confused now. But it's good to know that rudeness is kind of Russian quality. I used to think that it's my personal quality. Like,
oh, you mean that you were rude? That was a personal quality of yours?
No, I just like a person. I'm like that.
Okay.
Not because I'm Russian, because some people can be rude, some people can be nasty, you know. So.
And we could say it. I mean, it doesn't have to be said in terms of rude. I mean, it could be described as just strong or direct. You know, like we often say, oh, this person has a strong personality.
Yeah, direct, more better word, or rude.
Okay.
I heard that a lot from my husband a lot. He said, oh, but he never said that Russians are like that. He told me I'm like that. So it's good to hear that Russian is a Russian like national quality. It's not only my quality.
Right. Absolutely. That's like what I was saying before. I mean, that's where you come from. And in Russia, it's not considered rude. That's the way a lot of people are. Just like my background is Italian. And
I thought about that.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. You don't look 100%
Italian?
No, American.
Oh, I don't look 100% American. Okay.
Yeah, and you, in your personality, you have that influence, different. I feel that.
Uh-huh.
I feel that you're not like American. A little bit, you're different.
Well, I take that as a compliment. Thank you. I do believe I'm different because of many factors, and one of the main factors that I believe that is true is because I've traveled to a number of countries and I've had a lot of different experiences, and that has changed me and hopefully made me a better person because of that. But what I was going to say about my Italian background is that Italians often, and Italian Americans too, of course, often speak loudly, like around family and this sort of thing. And they, you know, people joke about this, and I don't mind people joking about this at all. But like, you know, Italians like to move their hands and their arms around a lot, and hey, you got to do this. And, you know, maybe they're talking to, like the father is talking to the son, and he's telling him something he wants him to do. If somebody else from another family was watching that, they would be thinking, why is your dad yelling at, at my friend over there? Why is he doing that? And then the family member would say, oh, he's not yelling, you know. But that's just the way a lot of them are, you know, at the dinner table, sitting around the dinner table, say, oh, why are you doing that, blah, blah. And people start raising their voices, and they're moving their hands around. And that's the way the family is. That's the culture. And when somebody else sees that, they think, oh, these people are very mad at each other. They're yelling at each other, when they're really not. So that's my little story to connect with your story, which is, of course, different. Yeah. But we are where we came from, so much of us. And perhaps that's what's going on. Now, when you deal with the Australian people, I'm just wondering, like, how do you react to them inside? Like, how do you feel? Like, do you think that they're being superficial with you? How do you feel when you're dealing with people from that country?
I think as a direct Russian, I feel they're superficial, like when they talk to me. Maybe because of my background. I like when people talk a bit directly what they want to do, or and I feel about Australia and they're like superficial.
I see.
And not truthful, like fake.
We are not saying Australians are superficial. Australians are great people, nice people, smart people, just wonderful people. She is just honestly relating her experience to us with the English that she has learned up until now. Does that make any sense? Okay? Anybody offended? All of you Australians? You understand, right? Thank you. Oh, I really appreciate your understanding. And now, back to the interview.
I mean, do you think they're being, when you say not truthful, are you talking about dishonesty, or they're just not being fully honest with you? They're just letting a little bit out, but they're not letting everything out.
Yes. 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 Like that.
Have you ever asked an Australian person about that?
Not yet.
Not yet.
I don't know how to ask, how to approach it.
Yeah, well, it's a difficult subject. It's very, very touchy. I think it would be very helpful to, to talk to somebody from that culture and get some kind of feedback on that, like perhaps a friend that you feel comfortable with at work or something like that. And if you perhaps approach them by saying, this may sound kind of crazy, but I just want to ask you a few questions, and it's nothing personal. Would you mind if I asked some things about, the culture here? That could prove to be very, insightful for you. Do you think that's possible?
I don't think it will be useful even, because you need a third person who, not like you, for example, who knows both cultures. Then he can tell something. But Australian, if I'll tell, I feel you're like that. You're a bit shallow, or you are like, how to say, fake.
Well, right.
And he will, no, we are not. We are normal. That's normal for us. That's how we live, and that's how we talk to people, and that's how I feel. They will not explain me anything. It will not enlighten me to anything. You need another person who will have that insight to Australian people, Russian people, any other culture to explain that.
Okay.
Because they're like in PC and I'm Mac, but we don't have connection between those computers. And they're running there, and how they can explain. You need a third person who will know both sides.
Well, I just want to point out that right now you're on a Mac and I'm on a PC, and we are connecting.
We have visual problem. I can't see you.
Yeah, I don't think that's a PC or Mac problem, though. I don't think that's a PC Mac problem. I think that's another problem. but we are talking to each other, and we are connecting on some level. But
on some level, not 100%. Yeah.
Right. I mean, my suggestion would be not to use too strong of words like fake or phony or anything like that. And if people are around you, that could give you some kind of feedback. I understand what you're saying, but that the third party situation may never happen. You've been there for 4 years, and wherever we're living in the world, we deserve to be happy and comfortable and connect with people. And we're at a time in this world where, we should be accepting all people from different countries. We shouldn't be showing like racism and things like this. And hopefully that the Australian people adhere to that philosophy. Where I live in Southern California, where there's people from all over the world, and generally speaking, people are very accepting of people from all countries. They even, they usually find them more interesting because they're from a different country, and they gravitate to them even more because they want to get to know somebody from another country. I mean, that's one of my thoughts. It's just my 2 cents. And, to put it to somebody in a light way, say, I'm from Russia. I know my personality is different. Why do you think this is happening? I wouldn't say anything to them like, you seem fake, or you seem like you're very superficial. I would just ask their opinion about perhaps my interaction with people and how they feel about it. It might be helpful. If it's not, just say, thank you. Always keeping it positive. I remember when I was in college, I studied Russian as a foreign language, and we had a teacher who was telling us about some trips they took to Russia, and she was telling us about one of their first trips to Russia. They were a group of American students, and they got off the plane, and they were so excited. And, when they went up to where you show your passport and all of that, and you need to interact with that person, they were like smiling. They were smiling and so happy. And then the Russian people working at the passport checkpoint, whatever that's called, I can't remember the name, they were like looking very serious and looked at them very strangely, like, why are you smiling? And it was kind of a bit of a shocking first cultural experience that they had, because they were all smiling, but nobody else was smiling. And at first, they didn't understand that. Does that make some sense to you?
Yeah, it sounds like...
It sounds what?
Like Russian people don't smile.
Right. So, there was a divide there. This makes me think of the phrase, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. What do you think about that phrase?
Yeah, I think I have to adjust and try to be Australian.
Well, the thing is, sometimes when people hear that phrase, well, some people feel like, oh, I don't want to pretend I'm somebody who I'm not. But I don't think that's the essence of the meaning of that phrase. The way I see it as, is, being open-minded, and, certain keys unlock certain doors. And, like, for instance, if I talk to somebody and I talk to them like with a lot of downward intonation in America, they will think I'm a little hard edge. Like if I say, did you get the report? When is it going to be done? I don't have all my paperwork together. As opposed to, did you get that report? yeah, I was just wondering about that. I'm not so sure about it. If my intonation goes up and I don't sound like this downward intonation, at least in America, people will definitely respond to me differently. And perhaps, doing like, more of a study of how they interact and that sort of thing in terms of intonation patterns, how body language is a big thing. Different countries, in terms of like, do they fold their arms? Do they keep their arms open? Do they smile a lot? Do they make a lot of eye contact? Do they not make a lot of eye contact? It's like when I go to the Far East in Asia, they don't make so much eye contact, So if I don't want to make somebody in one of these Far Eastern countries feel uncomfortable, I don't look at them in the eye as much as I would in America, because I want them to feel comfortable, and I know it's different, and I know I'm in a different country, and I'm just adapting to the way they do things, and sometimes it provides me some help, and it makes things work better. What do you think about that?
That's good. That's a correct way of doing things.
Yeah, see, you have a very nice smile, too. You're smiling right now.
I always smile with you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, maybe we should, or I should mention, I heard about this through Facebook when you and I connected on Facebook, and we were posting some things about a video I made, and you posted your comments in response to a video about, this was a girl from China who moved to America, and then you spoke about your experience a bit, and I found it very interesting for one, and something worthy to discuss, because what you're experiencing, is something that people experience in, all over the world when they go to a different country. It may not be exactly the same thing, but there are divides. And my feeling is everybody deserves to feel good and comfortable and happy where they are. And perhaps trying some new things, trying a different path, considering some different ideas could make one's life a lot more comfortable. And, I'm not saying I have all the answers, because I sure don't. And I've had my frustrations living in other countries, and I didn't have the answers for all of those situations. Analyzing the other people, what do they do? Why do they do it? Ask some questions. I mean, if you had some Australian people, you could even ask some questions to, like, why do you say this phrase, or why do you do this, and why do you do that? If you say it in a very non-threatening way, I think people would be happy to help you out. Another problem could be, and this is just an idea that came to my head, is that, you're Russian. You look, like you could be an American. You look like you could be an Australian. You look like the people. Now, if you looked very different, if you looked like you were, I don't know, East Asian, very Chinese or something, people may, what's that?
They will get ready.
Well, yeah, they're more prepared. They're like, oh, this person is very different from us. Therefore, we will, get ready. We will make more of an effort to connect with this person and be more understanding because of the differences. But perhaps, this is just speculation, because you look like an Australian could very well look, that they respond to you differently. And your job is a little more difficult because of that. They may look at you like, well, you're just one of us, so why do you act that way? And they don't even realize they're doing that. We're kind of probing a little deeper. And because of that, it makes your job much different because you're just as different as that Chinese person. You're from Russia. You're from very, very far away, very different culture, of course, totally different language, different almost everything. So that could be happening.
Yeah.
So perhaps your job could be to, to analyze the culture and the people and ask some very polite, non-threatening questions and see what happens. One thing I used to do when I wanted to find out something from people I didn't know too well or I didn't know at all is I would tell perhaps a white lie. Now, it wasn't always a lie, but sometimes I would just say, I would approach somebody either through email or directly, face-to-face, whatever, and I would say, I'm studying, I'm a student right now, and I'm doing some research on this topic. Do you mind if I ask you a few questions? And then usually people are very responsive. They're like, oh, okay, fine. But if I just went up to somebody and I say, why do you people do this? They may think, well, that's strange. Why are you asking me that? And they may not want to respond. But, if I say, I'm studying this, which is actually not a lie because you are studying it. You're just not in a formal program. It tends to open the door. And it's always worked for me. I started with one question, and then I usually started talking to that person for like a half an hour. And what I found was that person really enjoyed answering the questions. The person usually found it interesting that somebody else was interested in him or her or their country or their culture.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
That's good.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So what would be great is maybe if you tried some of this, and then we could get some feedback and see how it's going and that sort of thing, because I would like your life to be more comfortable in that land where you're living, and I'm sure you would too. And I think this could be a great learning experience for everybody, for you, for me, and for people who watch this. Because oftentimes, well, let me backstep for a moment. You told me that you learned English when you were in Sri Lanka.
Yes.
Right. And I find you to be very interesting because you're from Russia, but you don't have a Russian accent. You have like an Indian or Sri Lankan accent, and that's very rare, especially for me. I've never heard that before. So when we learn language, like you learn language in Sri Lanka, you learn to speak English, we learn a lot about the language, and oftentimes we talk about some cultural issues, but we usually don't get very deep into cultural understanding. Like politicians are supposed to be schooled on cultures that they have to interact with and things like this. And perhaps if we as language learners were able to do some little deeper study in cultural differences and successful ways to connect with other people, because we can talk about cultural issues all day long. Oh, in Russia we do this, in Australia they do that, or in Sri Lanka they do this, in Australia they do that. Okay, that's nice, interesting, but the bottom line is, how can we successfully connect with these people? That's what we're really after. If I was going to move to Japan, asking questions about Japanese people, if I know some Japanese people here I could ask, I could do certain things, and perhaps by, studying people, culture, asking a lot of questions, I can really connect with the people and feel comfortable with them. And if they say something or look at me in a certain way, I don't think they hate me. I think, oh, that's what Japanese people do. Oh, Japanese people do it this way. And then I can feel good about myself and keep moving on. So perhaps this could be one study in that regard where we're looking at the people of Australia and how can we understand them. And perhaps you could give us some feedback and some insight on that.
It's interesting what you are talking. It's important to understand culture and study the culture. You can make better or faster progress. By living in the country, we learn certain things, but it will take years and years to understand.
Right.
But if you put effort for this, so I think it will be faster.
I agree 100%. I've known people who have lived here in America for over 20 years and barely know the language, barely know the culture. And I've known people who've lived here under a year and just adapt very fast. And the difference is what you just mentioned. You know, that second person, the one who adapted fast, really focused on studying the people, the culture, and asking questions and trying to understand it, and made a big point in doing that, and thus things happen rapidly for that person.
Yes. I know people who live in Australia for, like you said, 20 years, and they don't mix with Australian, and they don't put effort to learn language. So they're like same. They don't know even English. After 20 years living here, they hardly even speak in English.
Right. I know. It's same thing here. It's really funny. I remember I asked somebody in that situation what they thought about a cultural difference like American culture, and their response to me was, there is no American culture. I was like, what do you mean there is no American culture? Are you kidding? But, you know, they're in their own world. They're in their own contained world, and they don't really know much about the country at all. It's as if they're living in their home country because they're not speaking the language, they're not interacting with the people, and they're not making an attempt to learn.
Have to put effort. Effort is very important, because without effort, for example, I talk in English I talk this English language for 11 years now, but I didn't put effort. I didn't put enough effort, I think. And I made a progress within 3 years. Then it stopped because I learned certain amount of language, and it was enough in Sri Lanka for people to understand me. I make mistakes when I'm talking. So I stopped putting effort to learn language, and my language, that ability also stopped. And I didn't develop after that. It didn't develop after that. So it was on the same level. Unless you put effort, things will change.
Right. Yeah, I understand what you mean. I've also seen that same thing here, like people will reach a certain level so that they can get by and they can communicate, but they don't move it above that level. And many more doors perhaps would open if they moved it above that level.
Because it's kind of comfortable, more or less comfortable.
Right.
So nothing, there is no force inside.
There's no one pushing you. Yeah, right.
You, unless you will feel, now I feel a bit uncomfortable in Australia because I think my English is not enough. My knowledge of language is not enough to communicate. I can't understand sometimes what not 100%, some words, especially jokes, I can't understand.
Oh,
jokes
really?
are the most difficult, I think, to understand.
Do you watch Australian TV news?
Yeah.
Okay. And
sometimes.
Like what for entertainment, do you watch Australian TV shows or do you watch Russian TV shows?
I watch this TV, what we have here.
Oh, what you have there? Okay.
And Russian as well.
Anyway. Well,
Watch Russian because I like one show.
oh, sure.
Russian. I watch Russian TV. I like one particular show in Russia on Russian TV, but like in majority, I watch Australian. But now it's not Australian; it's American. It's all different.
Oh, I see. It's a mix. Yeah. Well, I was just thinking in terms of, yeah, if
language.
Right. If there was some like TV shows where Australian people are speaking and they're speaking fast, and perhaps that would help you to absorb those, more difficult areas like jokes and, perhaps some things that you have a hard time understanding. I think it's fine to watch Russian shows too. I mean, absolutely. You can't cut yourself off from everything, but, perhaps that helps a bit.
Yeah, I watch Australian shows.
That's good.
Movies.
Okay.
Now I also learn how to understand movie without understanding the words.
Oh, really?
I think there's people who, yeah, I learn, and even I know, and I can predict how the movie will finish, and I understand everything, but sometimes I don't understand some certain words I can't understand, but I understand the movie very well, because movie is not only words, some other things like
sure.
visual. Yeah. So I learned that to pay attention more for how people look, how expression on the faces, that kind of things.
Ah, I see. Okay, that's very good. So you're looking at it from different perspectives.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. Well, like I said before, I can't speak for Australians. All I can do is perhaps, give you my 2 cents from what I've experienced in terms of, and what I've seen in terms of Russians and Americans. And, and I already mentioned this, but I'll just say a few of these again. Perhaps, smiling a lot to them, upward intonation when you talk is very good, saying thank you a lot, and not using strong words to describe something.
There's a special instruction for Russian.
I don't want people to think that I'm anti-Russian, because I'm not at all. I'm just trying to be forthright and honest about, some things I've seen and some things I've experienced, because I love Russian people. They are great people, and, everybody in the world is different and has different things, but this is just something that I've seen in terms of some Americans and some Russians or former Soviet bloc country people who have come to America. These are some things that I've seen that can help, and sometimes the use of strong words can be like a real turnoff to Americans. And if you can't think of another word, I believe it's better to say, something, I can't think of a better way to describe this. So forgive me if this word is too strong, but here it is, blah, blah, blah. Then there'll be more understanding about it. And I also think, like I said before, since you look like you could be Australian, there's nothing wrong with reminding people and saying, oh, my language skills because I'm Russian, and just saying that. Your language skills, in my opinion, seem quite good. I understand everything you say. So if you were living here, I think we could communicate without any problem. But if you did use some strong words, I know it would put off some people. But if you remind people, oh, I'm from Russia, I still have a language problem, or I'm still working on my English, people love to hear that. They love to hear that, and it opens their mind. It reminds them, this is a language learner. They have a much more difficult job than I do because I'm a native speaker. And sometimes people need to be reminded, you know, and it sounds funny that you have to be the one to remind them because in your mind, you know that you're a language learner, but they may not be thinking that all the time, and perhaps that might help a bit, you know. Tell them, I'm from Russia. I'm still working on my language. I'm sorry. I can't think of another word, but this is the best word I can think of right now. And then say it, blah, 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 blah. So how would I describe that? How would you use, you know, how would you change that? You could ask them, well, how would you say that idea, you know, being an Australian, you know, and then perhaps you get some good tips that way. Okay?
Yeah.
And I'm always here for you. You can talk to me, and I'll do my best to support you and try to help you out the best I can. And perhaps after we run this, we'll get some good ideas from some people watching as well. But it's, you know, this cultural divide is never easy, and you're a very brave person. I mean, so many people would not, you know, venture to other countries and try living here, try living there, and that's a very brave thing to do. So I think it's great that you're doing that.
I did know it will be so difficult.
Ah.
I did know. I thought in Sri Lanka, it's a big cultural difference in culture between Russia and Sri Lanka, but it was not difficult for me. But I think maybe Russia is a direct, like Russian is a very strong and direct, and Australia, which is very kind of, you know, Australian. So that's kind of not matching.
Right.
It was all right in Sri Lanka. Sri Lankan personalities, like I could say, they're simple, a little bit lazy, not punctual. They can say one thing and in always they could be late. So maybe this kind of, it's close to Russia maybe.
I see.
It was easy, like it was easy living in Sri Lanka, but here it becomes like very, like I feel a lot of tension,
Right.
depression.
Right.
Sometimes I feel very like tense and getting depressed. Especially it's happened when I was studying in university here. Last year I was studying with young girls,
Mm-hmm.
and they're Australian, and I'm not young, so I was feeling very isolated and very depressed, and I stopped studying. I couldn't study. I was coming home and feeling very bad. And yeah.
I see. No, I can understand that. You know, another suggestion that comes to mind is you should get involved in some groups with some people down there, you know? Oh, you do?
Yes.
What do you do?
It's different. It's I'm going to a religious community.
Uh-huh.
It's we have a Gurdjieff society.
Uh-huh.
Those people are different. They're different. They're Australians, but they're different.
So you don't have problems connecting with them?
No.
Oh, that's good. Well, that's important that you have some people. I mean, do you think you could talk to some of these people about these issues?
Yeah, I will.
Oh, good,
Yeah.
good.
I will do that next meeting.
Right. Okay. Good. And
Regular meetings.
and you know just other ideas are. I imagine that like a meetup.com is worldwide, and anything that you have an interest in, from painting to rollerblading to and like sports or like a book reading or anything. I mean, any type of activity. I know in America there are groups for those, and if you can get in, with a group like that on, just having something in common, and the more people you can connect with that way, I think could really advance this, of you connecting with the culture so much faster. You start talking, you make friends with them, and then, you learn more and more, you feel closer to them. And
I have to make friends with Australian now.
Right. I would try, go online and look up meetup.com and look at all the different activities going on in your area and join some of the groups. If you don't like it, you don't have to go back. It's no problem. But you just might like it. And if you like it and you're given an opportunity to connect with some more of these people, I think it could be a great thing.
Yes, I do that. It's a good advice to people to get friends.
Right.
Interests, the hobbies.
Right, hobbies and things like that.
I have a lot of hobbies.
Oh, good.
Yes.
That's great.
I'm connected through that. But it's different. At work, it's different. They're like a bit different Australians. Because I have interest in certain things, so that interest unites us.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, very good. Well, this has been a very interesting talk, Olga, and I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your experience with us. That was a really important thing. Because a lot of people feel these things and they just don't talk about it. And myself, I'm involved in language learning, but I'm interested in the greater issues, and I've experienced what you're talking about as well. So I hope that this will help a lot of people, and we'll keep track of this, and we'll talk to you down the line and see how things are coming for you.
Thank you, Dave. I also learned a lot of things today by talking to you, and especially about the Russian quality, which I wasn't aware.
Oh, good.
This Russian directness and the heart, I didn't know that. I'll try to put effort, I think, to get to know Australian culture and be more active. Yeah, have to be more active and get more friends, Australian friends, and communicate with them more often. Yeah, thanks, Dave.
Oh, well, that sounds great. I'm glad to hear that. And you're very welcome, and thanks for being on. So I'm going to sign off now, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and let's be in touch soon. Okay, Olga?
Okay, Dave. Have a good night, I think. What time is there?
It's 8:25 at night.
Yeah, we have 1:25 here.
So you have the rest of your day. You have some afternoon left. I'm going to go eat dinner right now.
Yeah, dinner.
And take my dog for a walk.
Okay, it was very nice talking to you.
And thank you so much. Take care, Olga.
Yes, you too.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.